Hey, BookTube, Science Fiction Reads here with another book haul of sorts. This is another vintage science fiction magazine haul for the most part. And I am coming at you severely sleep deprived and somewhat in a rush to get this filmed while I still have the place to myself. I got a few different things here. The coolest would probably be these analog magazines. But first I'm going to go through just these paperbacks. I got all of this stuff from the same person as last time, a local guy who this time got in touch and said he had more for me. So we met up again, and sure enough, a bunch of old, awesome vintage SF magazines. And I really appreciate reaching out to me this time, Larry, to let me know you had more stuff. Very awesome. So I'll just go through some paperbacks I happened to get from him. I think these were actually from his personal collection. I got a few Stanislaw Lem's. The Invincible is one that is, I think I've had this checked off as wanting to read it on Goodreads for quite a long time. Can't remember much about it, having read the synopsis so long ago, but yeah, just a few Stanislaw Lem's. He had a bunch paperbacks, but I had the majority of them. I already had them. Here's an H-Beam Piper Federation. I don't know anything about this. I know he wrote the Fuzzy series, and I know it says Future History right on the top there. So I love me some Future Histories. So I'm looking for, is this even... Yeah, I gotta look into this a little more. I'm not even exactly sure what this is, but it looks interesting. Here's one I'm really happy to have found. I didn't know this existed. This is Hidden Variables by Charles Sheffield. It's a short story collection. I have one other of his short story collections, and I can't imagine there's many. Has Georgia in the title, which I think is a Hugo-winning short story he wrote, but I can't remember what it's called. But I'm looking forward to this. Charles Sheffield wrote the Heritage universe or stories. It's like, was it like five? I think it was 5 novels. They're kind of space opera with hard SF and humor. I really enjoyed them. I have a video specifically talking about them too. Another one that I've been on the lookout for a long time, Brian Aldiss, Greybeard. This is like post-society collapse. Kind of like Children of Men, wherein nobody can reproduce anymore, I think due to radiation or fallout from some sort of atomic bomb or war. And this follows some elderly couple, I think, Greybeard and his wife, Martha. I don't know much more about it. I just remember reading the synopsis for it years ago, and I've just always had it in mind. And I finally found it. Silverberg here, Lord Valentine's Castle. I have, let me see, I have Valentine Pontifex, and I think there's a few others in the series. I know I don't have this one. I might have a few others in paperback, or I may have this in paperback, but it's not on the shelves. So, and that came highly recommended by Larry, who I got all of these books from. A bunch of Simax here. The Trouble with Tycho. This one's funny because it has a little book plate in the front with somebody with the same surname as me, which I don't know who that is, but it's pretty wild, the chances of that. Here's one with epic cover art. I'm not spending so much time on these because, like I said, I want to get through the majority of this quickly while I have the house to myself. One other, Why Call Them Back from Heaven. That one's been on my list to read, so I got a bunch of Simax now. All in paperback, whereas all the ones I have currently are all book club edition hardcovers. And one hardcover here, Asimov, The Complete Robot. This is 30-something short stories, maybe some novellas in there. I think I Googled, at the time this was, I believe, up to date, but and had all the robot stories, but I think I saw Google or something that since this was published, there's a few more. Might not be true. And I might be misremembering. Okay, on to the really cool stuff here. So a lot of what I got was analogs, but starting in 64, and I think for half of 65 or so, they were released in this like large regular magazine size, which I'm not sure I ever knew that, because when I saw them yesterday in person, it just struck me as the coolest thing I've ever seen. I don't recall ever knowing that these existed, but there's something even more cool about these. The issue before this, which was, let's see, this is January 64, so December 63 was when Frank Herbert's short story Dune World was first published, and it was serialized. It was serialized in 3 parts, and I have here January 1964, Dune World by Frank Herbert, part 2 of 3 parts. So the first publication of Dune, I don't have the first part, but I do have the second. I don't have space for this. The second and third part of that. Here is, yeah, February 1964, and if we open this up, let's see here, yeah, serial, Dune World Conclusion by Frank Herbert. So that is pretty awesome. I don't have the first part, but what became Dune was, of course, first serialized in analog as Dune World, and then later on, a second short story called The Prophet of Dune, which I have here, which started, let's see here, I have, yeah, Prophet of Dune by Frank Herbert. This is January 65, but is it the first half? Or the first part? Yeah, The Prophet of Dune, part 1 of 5 parts. And I have the next 2, so I don't have the complete story for The Prophets of Dune either, but check this out. Part 2, look at that amazing cover art that everybody would recognize. Oh, this is part 3. What month is it? Oh, this is March. I got them a little backwards. So part 2 is here, February, yeah, 65. Now, I probably would have bought these anyways for the cover art, but to know that it's the first publication of Dune, or what became Dune, later in 65, I think, right? Yeah, part 2 of 5 parts here. Some other cool stuff in here, but yeah, these are pretty exciting to have about half of each of the short stories that were combined to become Dune. And I mean, I might put that in a frame. That's awesome. Now, that's not all. I have the rest of 1964 here. So that's 15 total. That might be the entirety of the analog magazines that were in this large size. I have not Googled that to confirm. But here we have March 64, which, oh, there we go, Spaceman, a new novel by Murray Leinster, who is someone I've mentioned occasionally. I do tend to enjoy his stuff. I don't really recognize, oh, Norman Spinrad is in here with a novelette. Actually, let me go back to the Dune here, because there should be, I would think there would be illustrations in here. And that might be neat to see. Well, here's, I really didn't do my homework, but I mean, I'm not that knowledgeable on these old magazines anyways. I just thought it'd be fun to open them up and go through it. Here's a cool, that's pretty neat. Oh, there we go. There's another sandworm illustration. Of course, I've never read Dune. I've owned the book forever. I just have not watched, or have not read it. But this is certainly going to get me interested. Okay, so let's keep going through these, because I'm not getting through these as quickly as I had hoped. Another awesome illustration. Who do we have in here? Sailing Ships of Space, Sunjammer by Winston P. Sanders. See, that sounds interesting. Somebody writing about solar sailing in 64. That would remind me of Arthur C. Clarke, The Wind from the Sun, which is a great little, I think it's a short story rather than a novella, but it is the title story for this collection. Oh yeah, it's only 20 pages. I remember liking that. That was really good. But when did he write that? That's the question. And the publication info is not in there. I'm just curious to know who wrote the first solar sailing story. Oh, this is awesome art here. These are, of course, the 1964 run here. Yeah, I have all 12 from 1964 and the first 3 from 65. Is that right? Or did I have that backwards? No, that's right. James H. Smits. John Brunner is in here with a short story, and that's like the only... Oh, P. Charlotte Miller, I recognize him. Yeah, so the thing about these is, with the last video about magazines I had, those were from the 40s, 50s, which I'm not as familiar with those authors, or a lot of the authors that appeared in them, whereas what I have here is 60s and 70s magazines, which feature a lot more people that I'm familiar with. Oh, wow. See, it's really cool to have the art so large. Gordon Dixon story in here, Dolphin's Way. Just gonna skim through these quickly here. More great art. Genius Trader by Mac Reynolds. Not that I know if the art corresponds to the story on the front cover, but... And they also have, you know, this little self-addressed envelope here to sign up for a subscription. Still in here. That's awesome. Who do we have in this one? A Case of Identity by Randall Garrett. I feel like I've heard of that. That's a novelette. There's a short story by Pierce Anthony and James Hoteling called Shale. I feel like I've heard of that too. Huh. And a serial, Sleeping Planet by William R. Burkett, Jr. Another Mac Reynolds story with some awesome art. Wow. The Mary Celeste Move by Marie Celeste. Frank Herbert story here. Cool. Just a couple more. Gunpowder God by H. Beam Piper. I really got to read something by him. Oh, wow. And the last one here, December 1964, Plague on Kreider 2 by Murray Leinster. Awesome. I'm loving that Murray Leinster appeared on some of these large-scale magazines. That's very cool. Rescue Operation by Harry Harrison. Yeah, so that's the end of these large analogs, which are very cool. I've never seen these before in the wild. I may have seen them online years ago, but they made quite an impression when I saw them yesterday for the first time. So, after that, I've just got a handful of regular-sized older magazines. I have 2 Galaxy magazines from, I think they're both from the 70s. This one doesn't actually say. In 1979. So I've never actually come across any Galaxy magazines. I think these are, unless I had some in that last video, but I don't think I did. But this has, I saw this earlier. Where did that go? Gem by Fred Pohl, which I'm sure became a novel, but here it's serialized, which is neat. And I've got another one here with a Poul Anderson story, Our Many Roads to the Stars. There's a Niven and Pornell in there, and of course, some awesome art. What did Niven and Pornell write in here? Oh, this says Alien Persuasion by Jeffrey Carver. I have multiple books by him involving some sort of kind of space pirate series. I can't think of the name right now. Inferno by Larry Niven and Pornell, part 2 of 3, and I believe that also became a novel, I'm sure. I've got one other analog here from 82. Don't really recognize anyone in this one, unfortunately. Then I've got a few amazings here. January 86. Amazing Stories, 79. It's got The Perfect Woman by Robert Sheckley. And a bunch of other people I don't know. Under the Mad Sun by Ted White. That's an excellent title with excellent cover art. Oh yeah, very cool art there. All right, and then the last one I have is a bunch of fantasy and science fiction magazines. These will be in descending order from the 80s down to the late 70s. Right off the bat, Spider Rose by Bruce Sterling. That sounds awesome. The only Bruce Sterling I've read is short stories here and there. And I think they've all been like cyberpunk / hard SF. Strange to see Stephen King is in here. This one is November 81. Let's see. Stephen King, The Dark Man. Oh, The Gunslinger and The Dark Man. Huh. I wonder... I don't know if The Gunslinger was first a short story and serialized. I guess so. The Dark Man must have been retitled The Man in Black. Let's just take a look at the opening line for this, 1969. Starts by saying this is the 5th tale of Roland, the Last Gunslinger. So yeah, this is, I'm guessing, part of what became one of the books. I don't think there's short stories that take place in the Dark Tower series, is there? See, I haven't done my homework. I don't know. Barry Malzberg is in this one. I haven't read anything by him, I don't think, but I know Outlaw Bookseller is quite keen on him. I really need to give him a try. Love that cover art. What is going on there? Yeah, the 70s and 80s, that is my type of artwork on these. Very cool. Oh, there's another Stephen King here. Kind of curious what it is. The Oracle in the Mountains, a novelette. Oh, there's a Charles Sheffield in here called the Softest Hammer. Cool. Oh, Out Where the Big Ships Go by Richard Cowper. I've read that in a short story collection somewhere. Oh, and George Zabrowski, who, oh God, there's, I think a lot of books. I was just reading something by him that sounded really good, but I know him for the Omega Point trilogy, which probably is not that great, but I remember liking it when I read it. So much so that I laminated it with this terrible sticky stuff, which ultimately will ruin the book, but that was many years ago. Yeah, this just deals with a theme I like the idea of, which is the Omega Point, kind of like the end of the universe when all consciousness merges. Reading Darwinia by Robert Charles Wilson kind of reminded me of this book, or trilogy. This one has Philip Jose Farmer and Inconstant Moon by Isaac Asimov. Let's just see what Farmer wrote here. The Freshman. House Rule by Paul Anderson. Oh, and there's a series in fantasy and science fiction magazine just called Books, and I see this entry's by Algis Burgess, and maybe it always was, but I read, was it this one I read? Maybe it was in a different one, where he's just talking about recent publications. He was talking about the second book in the Book of the New Sun, the Gene Wolfe series, and how it was the most important series being written at this time, and I think those are going to be really neat to read. An expert in the field just talking about what's being written at the time, which at this point was the late 70s. I think those are going to be really neat. Paley Loitering by Christopher Priest. This looks neat. I have not read much Christopher Priest, to my shame. Oh, In Alien Flesh by Gregory Benford. Don't think that won a Hugo, but I've heard of that. Oh, you know why? Because he has a short story collection, and In Alien Flesh is the title story. Maybe that's right. Maybe it's not an award winner, but I've certainly heard of that, and that's why. But I do love Gregory Benford. Hard SF. Another great cover art. Oh, this one's a little damaged. The Flying Stutzman by Neil Barrett Jr. I just got a few books of his in a recent book haul. Yeah. Just a handful more. The Night of the Tiger by Stephen King. Oh, Stephen R. Donaldson's in here. The Lady in White, a novelette. And yeah, that same article, Books by Algis Burgess. That's cool. What's he talking about in this edition here? Let's see. He is talking about George R.R. Martin, who had a short story in one of these, and it looks like I missed it. I was going to point that out because it sounded interesting, but yeah, I definitely missed. I also missed that Mythico Wood by Robert Holstock's in that one. Oh, there it is. Yeah, George R.R. Martin is in this one, but what did he write? Night of the Vampires, or Vampires. Huh, and it's got some illustrations. That's neat. I'll have to look into that a little more later. All right, the last two. These are from, they're both from 77. Keith Roberts. Little ad for Asimov's magazine there on the back. And rounding it all out, I've got June 1977. With some familiar names now. Hold on. Gary Jennings. Gary Jennings is in this, and he, of course, wrote one of my favorite books, which is not science fiction, Aztec. Assuming this is the same Gary Jennings. I've never read anything else by him. What did he write? Not with a bang, but a bleep. Okay. That's interesting. That's a novelette. Cool. Yeah, like I've said before and in the previous video, I don't know much about the history of these magazines and stuff and who was in them, but I do find it really cool to see stuff like Holdstock's Mythico Wood and stuff like that, or the fact that, you know, stuff being serialized before it became something much bigger. Very cool. Like the Dune stories in these that's really, really neat. So now I'm going to spend an hour or two going through these to see what I actually have, because I've not looked at them in great detail. But there you go. I did not expect really to have more old magazines, so this was kind of a surprise and really cool. Probably cooler than the last magazine haul, to be honest. So pretty excited about this one. So as always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.